but a modern American quarter. A coin minted in 1976, still hiding in plain sight, still slipping through cash registers, still ignored by millions. And yet, in the right condition, with the right hidden details, one of these quarters has reportedly sold for as much as $844,000. Let that sink in. A single quarter, worth nearly $1 million. Now here's the question that should stop you cold. The story begins in 1976, when the United States celebrated its bicentennial, 200 years of independence. To mark the occasion, the U.S. Mint released special quarters unlike anything seen before. Instead of the traditional eagle on the reverse, these coins featured a colonial drummer, a torch of victory, and 13 stars representing the original colonies. They were patriotic, historic, memorable, and they were everywhere. Millions, no, billions, were struck. Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. But here's where things start to shift, because not all bicentennial quarters are created equal. Some were minted in San Francisco with the S mint mark, and those are the ones that demand your attention, because hidden among them are variations, errors, and ultra-high-grade specimens that collectors are willing to fight over. And in the world of coin collecting, fight doesn't mean words. It means money. Serious money. Now, most 1976 quarters fall into two main categories: proof coins and 40% silver issues. The proof versions were specially struck for collectors, with mirror-like finishes and razor-sharp details. The silver versions? Even more desirable, but here's the twist: even among these, there are anomalies. Coins that shouldn't exist the way they do. Coins that slip past quality control. Coins that carry tiny imperfections, that turn into massive value. Let me ask you something. Not glanced at it, not spent it, really looked. Because the difference between an ordinary coin and a life-changing one often comes down to details most people miss. Take, for example, double die errors. At first glance, the coin looks normal. But under magnification, the lettering, the date, even Washington's profile, shows a ghostly duplication. A slight shadow. A second strike where there should only be one. It's subtle. It's easy to overlook. It's gold. And then, there are off-center strikes. Coins where the design is shifted, leaving part of the surface blank. Or clipped planchets, where a piece of the metal is literally missing. Mistakes. Beautiful, valuable mistakes. And here's the shocking part: the rarer the error, the higher the price climbs. But errors alone don't tell the full story. Condition is everything. In coin collecting, condition is graded on a scale from 1 to 70. Most coins you'll find in circulation, they barely crack the mid-range. Worn edges, scratches, faded details. That's where things get serious. That's where prices stop making sense. Because collectors aren't just buying metal. They're buying perfection. They're buying rarity. They're buying the idea that this coin, this exact coin, is among the finest known to exist. And when supply is microscopic and demand is global, prices explode. Now imagine this. A 1976 Washington quarter. Silver composition. Perfectly struck. Impeccably preserved for decades. No fingerprints. No wear. No flaws visible even under magnification. A coin like that doesn't just sell. It commands attention. It sparks bidding wars. And in one reported case, it reached an astonishing $844,000. That's not hype. That's the market speaking. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because coins like this don't just appear out of thin air. They come from somewhere. They sit in drawers. They hide in old coin albums. They get passed down in collections, forgotten, overlooked, underestimated. Sometimes they even show up in pocket change. Yes, pocket change. And that's the part most people struggle to believe. But that's the paradox. The Bicentennial Quarter was mass-produced, But the extraordinary versions were not. It's like printing millions of lottery tickets, but only a handful are winners. And unless you check, you'll never know what you're holding. Now think about this. That's not fantasy. That's probability meeting opportunity. And right now, that opportunity still exists, because despite what you might think, the hunt isn't over. Collectors are still discovering rare bicentennial quarters to this day, still grading them, still uncovering hidden details that push values higher and higher. And here's something most people don't realize. The difference between a $5 coin and a $50,000 coin can be microscopic. A slight doubling of a letter. An almost invisible flaw in the strike. A subtle difference in luster. Tiny details, massive consequences. It's like a code. And once you know what to look for, you can't unsee it. First, the mint mark. Look for that small S just beneath the date. That tells you the coin came from San Francisco, a key starting point. Next, check the edge. Is it solid silver colored? Or does it have that copper stripe? A silver edge could indicate a 40% silver composition, and that alone boosts value. Then examine the surface. That could mean it's a proof coin, struck with extra care, and potentially worth far more than face value. And finally, look closer than you think you need to, because the real treasures hide in the details. Doubled letters, unusual textures, off-center designs, anything that feels off, anything that makes you pause, because sometimes that pause is the moment everything changes. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. The coins are out there, but most people will never find them. Not because they're impossible to find, but because they never look, they assume, they dismiss, they spend without thinking, and in doing so, they let opportunities slip through their fingers every single day. You're paying attention, and that already puts you ahead of millions. So here's your challenge. The next time you see a bicentennial quarter, don't ignore it. Don't toss it aside. Pick it up, turn it over, study it, because one coin, one discovery, one moment of curiosity could change everything. And maybe, just maybe, the next record-breaking quarter. A quarter. Dated 1977. No mint mark. Quiet. Ordinary. Invisible. And yet, in the right condition, with the right hidden traits, this single coin has been whispered about in collector circles for reaching values that push toward a staggering $944,000, almost $1 million, for 25 cents. This is the story of the 1977 Washington quarter with no mint mark, a coin so common on the surface, yet so mysterious beneath it, that it has sparked a quiet treasure hunt across America. And once you understand what to look for, you may never see your spare change the same way again. Because this isn't just about coins. It's about hidden value. It's about overlooked fortune. It's about the possibility that something small could change everything. The year was 1977. America was recovering from economic uncertainty. Inflation had shaken confidence. People were watching every dollar. And the U.S. Mint? It was producing coins by the billions, fast, efficient, and built for circulation. Philadelphia struck millions upon millions of Washington quarters that year. And here's the first twist. Philadelphia coins, at the time, carried no mint mark. Completely normal. Completely expected. Completely everywhere. Or so it seemed. Because within that ocean of identical coins, something unusual began to surface. Tiny anomalies, barely noticeable flaws, subtle differences that only the sharpest eyes could detect. And those differences? They changed everything. We're talking about doubled dies. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks that look like lightning frozen in metal. At first glance, they look like mistakes. They're signatures of rarity. Fingerprints of the minting process gone wrong, in exactly the right way. And here's where the story takes a darker, more intriguing turn. Most of these errors are incredibly subtle. You won't spot them by casually glancing at your change in a checkout line. You have to look closely, really closely. The eagle on the reverse. Are the feathers crisp, or is there an unusual softness, like a ghost image lurking beneath the surface? These are the clues. These are the whispers. And if you ignore them, you could be overlooking a small fortune. Because here's the truth that most people never hear. Condition is everything. It might still be worth just 25 cents. Maybe $1 or $2 to a casual collector. But a pristine example, what experts call mint state, is a completely different story. We're talking about coins that look as if they just left the mint yesterday. And oh, where? No damage. Full luster. Sharp detail. Coins that have somehow survived decades without losing their original brilliance. That's when things get explosive. That's when values start climbing into the thousands, tens of thousands, and in extreme, almost mythical cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. There are documented sales, real transactions, that have stunned even seasoned collectors, quarters that most people would have ignored, selling for life-changing sums. And one particular example, graded at the very top tier of condition, reportedly reached an astonishing price near $944,000, nearly $1 million, for a coin most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up. The answer lies in a perfect storm: rarity, condition, and timing. Because the coin market isn't just about what something is. It's about when it's discovered and who's looking. Imagine two collectors locked in a bidding war. Both know what they're seeing. Both understand the rarity. Both refuse to walk away. Suddenly, the price isn't just about value anymore. It's about desire. And desire has no ceiling. That's how a quarter becomes a headline. That's how pocket change becomes a story people can't stop talking about. But here's the part that should really get your attention. Most of these valuable coins weren't found in collections. They weren't inherited from wealthy relatives. They weren't locked away in safes. They were found in circulation. In jars, in drawers, in forgotten boxes. In the same places your spare change lives right now. Which raises a dangerous question. And more importantly, think about it. Every day, millions of coins change hands across the United States. Gas stations, grocery stores, vending machines. An endless flow of metal, moving from person to person, most of it ignored, most of it unseen. Possibility, opportunity. A chance that feels small, until it isn't. Because all it takes is 1.1 coin, 0.1 moment of attention, 0.1 decision to look instead of dismiss. And suddenly, everything changes. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Not all valuable 1977 no-mint mark quarters announce themselves with obvious errors. Some of the most sought-after examples are defined by their strike quality, sharpness, clarity, the way light reflects off untouched surfaces. Collectors pay a premium for coins that look exceptional, even if they don't have dramatic errors. So even if your quarter looks normal, don't write it off too quickly. Normal can be deceptive. In fact, some of the highest grade coins ever discovered were hiding in plain sight. No fanfare. No indication of their worth until someone took a closer look. And that's the real secret here. Not luck, not chance, awareness. Because once you know what's possible, you start seeing things differently. It's no longer just coins. It's a field of potential. A series of silent questions waiting to be answered. And maybe, just maybe, it is. Start simple. Check your quarters. Look at the date, 1977. Look for the absence of a mint mark. Then slow down. Examine the details, the lettering, the numbers, the design. If something catches your eye, don't ignore it. That instinct, that moment of curiosity, is where every discovery begins. Have it evaluated. Because in the world of rare coins, small differences can mean massive value. A tiny doubling, a slight misalignment, a barely visible flaw. These are the details that turn everyday objects into extraordinary finds. They're the ones who cash in.so the next time you reach into your pocket and feel the familiar weight of a quarter. Pause. Just for a second. Take a look. Because hidden among the ordinary could be something extraordinary. A coin that's been waiting for decades to be noticed. A coin that's traveled countless miles, passed through countless hands, only to end up with you. And the question is no longer whether these coins exist. Because what if I told you that one seemingly ordinary 1978 Washington quarter, no different at first glance from the millions minted that year, could be worth not hundreds, not thousands, but hundreds of thousands of dollars, even more under the right conditions? That's exactly what makes it dangerous. Because most people never even look, and that's how small fortunes slip quietly through everyday hands. The year is 1978. The United States Mint is striking Washington quarters in massive numbers. Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco, coins are pouring out, flooding circulation. Nothing about this year screams rare. Nothing about it hints at hidden treasure. But buried inside this ocean of ordinary coins are anomalies. Mistakes. Tiny deviations that weren't supposed to exist. They're what turned pocket change into life-changing money. Now here's where it gets interesting. Collectors have long whispered about certain 1978 quarters that appear to be missing something critical: the mint mark. No D. No S. Just a clean, unmarked field where a letter should be .at. First glance, you might think, so what? Big deal. But in the coin world, that's everything. Because a missing mint mark isn't just a cosmetic oddity. It's a signal. A clue. Sometimes a red flag pointing to something much rarer beneath the surface. Here's the twist most people never see coming. In 1978, Philadelphia quarters were typically struck without a mint mark. So technically, no mint mark coin from that year isn't unusual on its own. The answer lies in the details. The kind of details you can't see unless you know exactly what to look for. And once you do, you'll never look at a quarter the same way again. Let's pull back the curtain. Not all 1978 quarters are created equal. In fact, a tiny fraction of them carry hidden characteristics that transform them from everyday currency into collector gold. We're talking about striking errors, anomalies, and subtle variations that most people would overlook in a heartbeat. Take double die errors, for example. These occur when the coin's design is imprinted more than once, slightly offset. The result? Doubling in the lettering or numbers, sometimes faint, sometimes dramatic. Look closely at Liberty, or In God We Trust, or even the date itself. That's not where. That could be value. Then, there are off-center strikes, coins that weren't aligned properly during minting. Part of the design is missing, shifted off to one side. To most people, it looks like damage. It looks like opportunity. And it doesn't stop there. There are clipped planchets, where a portion of the coin is literally missing due to a cutting error. There are lamination errors, where the metal surface appears to peel or flake. There are even rare cases of wrong planchet strikes, coins struck on metal meant for a completely different denomination. Imagine holding a quarter that was never supposed to exist. Now imagine what someone might pay for that. But here's the real kicker. Condition is king. You could have a rare error, a genuine anomaly, something incredibly scarce, and if it's worn down, scratched, or damaged, its value drops. But if that same coin is found in near-perfect condition, what collectors call mint state, the value doesn't just increase, it explodes. We're talking exponential jumps, from hundreds to thousands to six figures. That's how you get auction results that seem almost unbelievable. That's how a coin that once bought a cup of coffee becomes a headline. And yet, stories like this keep happening. Ordinary people just like you, discovering extraordinary coins in the most mundane places. A coin inherited from a parent. A roll picked up from the bank. A handful of change from a gas station. At first, Nothing seems special until they look closer. And that's the moment everything changes. Because once you realize what's possible, you start to wonder. And more importantly, let's slow down for a second. Picture this. You're at home. Maybe it's late. The house is quiet. You dump out a jar of coins onto the table. Pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters. You pick one up. And oh, mint mark. Your heart skips just a little. But now you know better. Now you start looking. You tilt it under the light. You check the lettering. You examine the edges. It's the difference between ignorance and discovery, between spending and investing, between missing out and cashing in. Here's where urgency comes into play. Every day, coins like this are lost. They're spent without a second thought. They're tossed into vending machines, dropped into tip jars, handed over at checkout counters. Gone. Forever removed from the hands of someone who might have recognized their true worth. And once they disappear into circulation again, the trail goes cold. That's why timing matters. That's why awareness matters. Because the opportunity isn't just rare, it's fleeting. Collectors are constantly searching. Dealers are constantly buying. The market is always moving. It doesn't stay available for long. It gets snapped up, locked away in a collection. Or sold at auction for a price that leaves everyone else stunned. Now think about this. Not in a museum, not in a vault, but in everyday circulation. In someone's pocket. In someone's change jar. Maybe in yours. That's not fantasy. That's reality. Because history has already proven it can happen. Again, and again, and again. So here's the question that matters most. Because the difference between those two choices could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more. This isn't about luck. It's about awareness. It's about training your eye to see what others miss. It's about understanding that value isn't always obvious, but it's always there for those willing to look. Pause. Don't just spend it. Inspect it. Question it. Because hidden within that small, unassuming piece of metal could be a story. A mistake. A rarity. A windfall. And maybe, just maybe, a life-changing discovery. A simple 1967 Washington quarter. An mint mark. Nothing flashy. Nothing that screams treasure. And yet, one of these ordinary-looking coins has been reported to sell for as much as $394,000. Let that sink in. A quarter, worth nearly $400,000. Because the truth about the 1967 no-mint mark Washington quarter isn't just surprising, it's unsettling. Hidden within millions of these coins are subtle errors, rare conditions, and overlooked details that have turned pocket change into life-changing money. And most people miss them completely. Back in 1967, the United States Mint was dealing with a crisis. Coin shortages were everywhere. People were hoarding silver coins, and circulation was grinding to a halt. The solution? Drastic. The Mint made a bold decision: remove all mint marks from coins. An OD for Denver. No S for San Francisco. Just blank, anonymous, uniform. At first glance, that sounds like it would make these coins less valuable. After all, collectors love mint marks. But here's where the story takes a turn. By removing mint marks, the Mint unintentionally created a perfect storm. One where identifying rare variations became harder, mistakes slipped through unnoticed, and extraordinary coins were quietly released into everyday circulation. Coins that today can command staggering prices. But not all 1967 quarters are valuable. In fact, most are still worth just 25 cents. The answer lies in the details. Tiny details. Details most people would never think to check. Let's start with condition, because this is where things get serious. A 1967 quarter in average circulated condition? Common. Forgettable. But a coin in near perfect, uncirculated condition, what collectors call mint state, that's a different story entirely. Now imagine a coin graded MS 67 or higher. Sharp details. No wear. Brilliant luster. Almost flawless. These are the coins that stop collectors in their tracks, because they're incredibly rare. Think about it, these quarters were made to be used. Spent, dropped, scratched, worn down over decades. Finding one that somehow escaped all of that is like finding a time capsule. Bidding wars begin, prices climb, and suddenly that ordinary quarter becomes anything but ordinary. But condition is only part of the story, because hidden within some 1967 quarters are errors, and not just minor imperfections, dramatic, valuable, headline-making errors. Take the double die effect. At first glance, it's easy to miss. But look closer, and you might notice something strange. The lettering, "Liberty, in God we trust," appears slightly doubled. Almost like a shadow. That's not damage. That's a minting error. And collectors love it. Because it shouldn't exist. It's the result of a misalignment during the die creation process. A mistake frozen into metal, repeated across a limited number of coins before being corrected. Each one is a piece of history, and a magnet for serious buyers. Then, there are off-center strikes. Coins that weren't properly aligned when struck, leaving part of the design missing, shifted, or dramatically off balance. To the untrained eye, it might look like a defect, especially if the date is still visible. And then, there are the transitional anomalies. This is where things get truly fascinating. 1967 was part of a transitional era in U.S. coinage. Silver had recently been removed from quarters, replaced with a copper-nickel clad composition, but during transitions, mistakes happen. There have been persistent reports, rare, controversial, and incredibly valuable, of 1967 quarters struck on incorrect planchets. Coins that don't match the standard composition. Imagine finding a 1967 quarter that weighs differently, sounds different, looks slightly off. Most people would ignore it. They'd lean in closer, because that subtle difference could mean the coin was struck on the wrong metal, an error that can multiply its value dramatically. And this is where the numbers start to get shocking. High-grade 1967 quarters have sold for thousands, and in exceptional cases, coins combining pristine condition with rare errors, values can skyrocket into six figures. That's how you get to figures like $394,000. Not for just any coin, but for the right coin, with the right combination of rarity, condition, and demand. And here's the twist that keeps collectors awake at night. Many of these coins are still out there, not locked away in museums, not owned by elite collectors, but circulating, hiding, overlooked. In coin jars, in dresser drawers, in forgotten collections passed down through generations. Think about how many quarters you've handled in your lifetime. Probably none, because we're conditioned to see coins as ordinary, interchangeable, disposable. But the 1967 no-mint mark quarter challenges that assumption. It asks a simple, unsettling question. It happens more often than you think. Stories surface every year. People discovering rare coins in the most unlikely places. A jar inherited from a relative. A handful of change from a grocery store. A forgotten envelope tucked inside a book, and inside, a coin worth thousands. Or more. Start with the date, 1967. An no-mint mark. That's normal. But then, slow down. Examine the details. Look closer at the lettering. Check the edges. Feel the weight. Listen to the sound when it's gently tapped. Because in this world, different can mean valuable, very valuable. And here's where urgency comes in. The longer these coins remain undiscovered, the more likely they are to be lost, damaged, or spent unknowingly. Every day, rare coins re-enter circulation. Every day, opportunities disappear. The real question isn't whether these coins exist. We know they do. The real question is, will you recognize one before it's too late? Because somewhere right now, Myon is holding a 1967 quarter that could change everything. They just don't know it yet. And maybe, just maybe, that someone is you.so tonight. Before you dismiss your spare change as worthless, take another look. Open that drawer. Check that jar. Revisit that old collection. Because hidden in plain sight could be a coin that turns curiosity into discovery, discovery into profit, and profit into something unforgettable.